All right, folks, we're getting started. I'm just going to get the Facebook and the Telegram going, and then we'll begin. All right, folks, we are live. Don't forget to follow our pages on Facebook. Subscribe to our channels on Rumble, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. Also, we have a bonfire store, so let me play that intro for you guys real quick, and we'll get started. All right, folks, welcome to our show. We have a great show for you today. Today's is episode 19 of Tips, Techniques, and Survival Traits. And so we have a special broadcast for you. I wanted to switch gears from from last week because there's something else going on here with the weather, especially here where I am locally. We had these really weird freak nightly storms that just come out of nowhere, and we've been getting flash flood warnings. Now, mind you, I'm in Vegas, okay? This is kind of like highly abnormal. But we're going to tie in for you guys today the connection between the Arctic Cold War that they say is heating up and its connection to HAARP, and how all this weather manipulation is actually being engineered. So that's what we're going to be covering today, folks. So it's going to be a great show. That being said, I have some pre-recorded content for you guys. I want to start off with that to give you some background and context on geoengineering itself and the science of it, because it is a real science. As much as they deny it, it is a real science. These are facts we can prove. So with that being said, let me get the pre-recorded content playlist going here. Okay. And I will share my screen and then we'll begin. And then after the pre-recorded content, we will segue into some articles on geoengineering, as well as some articles on the Arctic war heating up from different countries, from Sky News Australia, from here in the States, and even from Russia Today. So we got a great show. Let's get started. Okay, everybody. This is summertime in Vegas, August 11th. It's about 9:30 p.m. Well, 9:24 p.m. Anyways, we've been getting these really strange nightly storms this whole week. And flash flood warnings and everything. And this is Vegas, okay, you guys? This is summertime in Vegas. This is unheard of, but it's happening. Okay, mind you that I've experienced 4 really different storms that didn't have so much rain but a lot of wind over the last 5 years. Well, actually since 2013 was the first one when I experienced that, when I had that on my video on my original Facebook. Anyways, I thought it was relevant because tomorrow we're doing our episode of Tips, Techniques, and Survival Traits. Episode 19, the Arctic War and its connection to HAARP. So, stay tuned for that. We'll be airing this footage on that episode.
Okay, now here's what I think is going on with these hurricanes getting squashed in Hawaii. I think there's a HAARP transmitter on Oahu.
I just want to give some context. This is circa 2014 when this video was made, folks, but it's still relevant.
Just behind the big naval base there. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to zoom in on Oahu. Go to the satellite view. Okay, and this down here, Honolulu, I guess is the big naval base. I'm not too familiar at all with Hawaii, so bear with me. But if we zoom in here, we're going to see something that looks really odd. First notice it as a bunch of little stripy dots. These stripes here. So let's just keep on zooming, see what we find. Okay, now this looks very, very odd. Okay, first we have this big open grassy area, and then we have these really strange striped areas, and it's backed right up on this mountain range here. So let's go ahead and have a look at what we see. It's my contention this is a HAARP transmitter that's actually hidden to look like something else. Now, these guys here, what these guys, okay, these ones here, these look more or less like the underground bunkers where they store nuclear weapons, because you have a truck track, and then here's like an underground opening, and so there's an elevator where they store nuclear weapons. And you know, these are pretty common because there's so many of those damn nukes. But if we look at some of these over here, they're made to look that way, but they're not actually the same structure. Like over up by this mountain here. Furthermore, if you're storing nukes underground, you really want to have a good strong fence. And these ones up by the mountain here don't seem to have any fence around them. So that's a strange thing. Okay, now these are a mystery, but these are not the main thing that I want to show you. These are just some strange looking, like little mounds or something, with a little possibly elevator going down. Okay, so let me show you again what's over here. This is the main topic, because this is no doubt some kind of very unconventional high-power transmitter. First we noticed there are these two really tall antennas. You can see the shadow going clear off to here. Let me make it a little bigger. Okay, and this one actually looks funny, a different angle. It's not parallel to the other one. How odd is that? Or the satellite has that much parallax. That's strange. I guess that's strange anyway. So this is a really huge, tall, enormous antenna. And the interesting thing is, if we look at how it's built, it's not anything like a normal TV antenna. Let me zoom all the way in. Okay, now this, I believe, is a HAARP, one of the many HAARP antennas. And if it's not for HAARP, then it's just for communicating with satellites, or sorry, submarines on the other side of the Earth. But we can tell from the shadow of this guy, number one, here are these high voltage insulators coming off the side here. I'll zoom in just a little. And what I'm looking at here is the shadow. So the shadow is telling us what these things are. And they are some really high voltage insulators. And oddly, they get smaller as you get to the top, which means there's more high voltage at the bottom than at the top. And also, right here, if we look at the shadow of this thing right here, this is the high voltage feed line for the antenna. Here's a giant insulator that comes out of the ground, comes up on this pipe. Now I'm looking at the shadow right here. This is the shadow. This is the actual wire, the giant coax, heliax or high voltage coax. So the shadow shows us that it goes in there. So, but this is not even the most interesting feature. The most interesting feature is right at the top here. We see a spider web of radial cables. These are the radiating elements of the transmit tower. And we can see, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's probably 12, 14, or 16 of these radial wires coming out. And let's just trace one, this one here. And what we find at the end is a high voltage insulator. Before it can touch the ground, here's the insulator. Right here. There's the insulator. So, in other words, this part down here is connected to ground, a giant block of concrete. But this side up here has a high voltage, high frequency on it. This is a HAARP transmitter, and a really big one. And over here we see another one. Here's another one right here. And another one over here. So it's the same insulator. Oh, this makes it easier to count the number of transmitter lines. Here's another one. So this is just the oddest damn antenna. And the shortwave guys know that you can actually buy a little antenna like this from Radio Shack. It's a real broadband antenna, and probably about 4 feet across, and pretty good for all kinds of frequencies, but it has pretty low gain, and it's omnidirectional. So the fact that there's two of these, there's one tower here, unzoom. Okay, there's one tower here, and then there's a twin tower right here, or I assume it's a twin. Oh my gosh. I haven't actually looked at this very closely. Let's have a look. Yep, it's a twin. And actually this one's easier to see, so I apologize. This is exactly the same. We zoom in the top, we see those little fine wires coming out, and we can actually count them here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there must be 16 of those radial wires. So you could actually have 8 separate channels to form a beam. And judging by the look of these insulators, like say this bottom one here, you know, maybe each one of these insulators is good for 50,000 volts, and maybe there's 6 of them there. So, you know, you might have 300 kilovolts on this. This one's easier to see. Maybe, just as a wild guess, maybe 50 kV. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 250,000 volts, possibly on this tower itself. And, you know, that would be kind of odd to put... what makes more sense is that they're insulated from the tower because they are radiating elements, so that these brace wires are actually high voltage. In fact, that's what's happening here, because we see the brace wires have insulators on them. So these brace wires are not just for bracing the tower, they are radiators. They're driven elements in this antenna system. So yeah, this is either a submarine communication system or a HAARP transmitter, or both actually. So that's why you have hurricanes approaching the big island of Hawaii, suddenly turn off, completely shut down, and they're not even a hurricane anymore. So this is another thing that's interesting here is the names of the streets. We have Morse Street, Hertz Loop, Edison Street, Radio Road, Marconi Street, there's Edison Street. Notice they didn't mention Nikola Tesla. They should all be named after Tesla. Even Marconi stole Tesla's radio patent. So what they're saying here with all these radio pioneer names is that we are also radio pioneers, and these 2 towers are our display. So this is a radio pioneer area, and I really think that these strange looking things here, that they look like, well, firstly, there is a fence around some of these bunkers here. So those could be underground storage for nukes, because there is a big fence around these. But these guys up here next to the mountain, there's no fence. There's no fence. But these could be elements, radiator elements of a HAARP array. Because the HAARP is such low frequency, it doesn't really have to be well above ground or whatever. It could be sort of near the ground, maybe even underground, I don't know. But that's just too odd. Very, very odd. I mean, I don't see any big fence here. I see mountains. So, I would say count your blessings, Hawaii, that they do have a system to protect you from hurricanes. So, you know, this is another beneficial use of HAARP. They're few and far between, but it's such a powerful technology that it does have beneficial uses. So why not make this public? This technology should be public, and then the American taxpayer will be happy to support something. You know, it's kind of like plywood over your windows when you have a hurricane. But this is more elaborate, and we're not going to make plywood a big secret, so why should this be secret? It's because they're using it for negative and evil and greedy purposes as well. Well, those need to stop, and this whole thing needs to be declassified. That's my opinion, and maybe you can agree after you see the big picture like I do a little bit. Yeah, see, these are mountains. I don't see any dang... very odd. Very odd. I don't see any fencing. It's hard to fence over a mountain, in case you hadn't noticed. Okay, thanks for watching.
Our next speaker is someone who could tell you firsthand about geoengineering. Her name is Kristen Meghan, and it's taken her a lot of guts to come here and speak what she has to say, so give her a big hand.
This presentation has been brought to you by Gigi Bowman for State Senate and Oath Keepers.
All right, first off, I just want to, I know everyone else has said it, but I really appreciate everybody that has come out here today. It's not just showing up and supporting an event, it's actually listening to those of us who are here to share a message. So, as it was presented to you, I'm here to speak to you about geoengineering. First thing I want to ask you is, who doesn't believe it exists? Anybody here on the fence? Okay. Well, hopefully when you leave here today, you don't just believe it, you share the information that I'm going to share with you, and you get more people on board to stop this unethical crime. I want to show you a video clip because the first thing people ask me about geoengineering is, who are these people? Who are the people that are, kind of pushing the button to get this thing going? One of them, his name is David Keith. And David Keith has been low in the radar for a while. But he has written a book about climate engineering that has basically done more for the truth movement of this than anything. Because he is the frontline person that is the #1 advocate for geoengineering. And I want to show you a clip. It's about 6 minutes, so just bear with me.
You ever look at those planes up there? They have contrails on them. Maybe all those planes are the contrails. Maybe they're actually spraying chemicals into the atmosphere right now, and Uncle Sam isn't telling us.
Seems extremely unlikely. The fact
that the United States is not telling something to its citizens, that seems extremely likely to me. Read the newspaper.
And of course, there are a lot of problems with what they're proposing. It turns out plants need sunlight.
Yes.
Have you gotten some grief for suggesting this?
Sure. I mean, this is like writing a book that's the case for leprosy.
Well, first of all, let me ask you this question, because there's a rumor, I don't know if this is true or not, that some scientists are trying to figure out a way to block the sun to try to slow down global warming.
Could an individual start this?
In practice, only a country. A big country.
What about a man in like a hollowed out volcano with henchmen who occasionally shakes his fist at the sky and says, "They said I was a fool at Harvard. Who's the fool now?"
It's All Things Considered from NPR West. I'm Arun Roth. If scientists get the calculations wrong, it could be catastrophic for life on Earth. Or what if the technology got into the wrong hands? Couldn't someone shoot poison into the atmosphere?
So people are terrified about talking about this because they're scared that it will prevent us cutting emissions.
Right, and also that it's sulfuric acid.
It is.
You're bearing the lead. Is there any possible way this could come back to bite us in the ass?
You put another kind of pollution, sulfur dioxide, up to orbit, cover the atmosphere. The sky won't be really blue in the way it is now anymore.
Blanketing the earth in sulfuric acid, because I'm all for it. This is the all chocolate dinner. I still get to have my CO2, and I just need to spray sulfuric acid.
Right.
All over the earth.
Right. But we put 50 million tons of sulfuric acid in the air now as pollution, and it kills 1 million people a year worldwide.
Okay, and that's
so
good or bad?
It's terrible.
But it'll be better if we put more in. So if it kills 1 million people and we're only doing 1% more, we're just killing 10,000 more people.
You can do math. So killing people is not the objective here.
Killing people, not the objective. I just wanted to be clear.
Because some very mainstream scientists are saying that the climate change situation is so bad that saving life as we know it might require something radical, like shooting chemicals into the stratosphere to reflect sunlight.
This is the kind of stuff I wake up sweating about. Exactly.
Well, it's your goddamn idea.
No, it actually turns out to be an old idea. This was known since President Johnson, and the scientific community mostly decided not to talk about it.
What happens to the sulfuric acid after it's sprayed? Does it just stay up there?
No, it rains down.
Okay.
But as I said, it rains down.
Okay.
It's a tiny addition.
Okay.
And you'd put, say, 20,000 tons of sulfuric acid into the stratosphere every year, and each year you have to put a little more, and this doesn't, in the long run, mean that you can forget about cutting emissions. We will need to rein in.
No, we'll get to it eventually, yeah.
But it does.
In the meantime, we're shrouding the Earth in sulfuric acid.
So it is that you could actually spray sulfuric acid in the stratosphere 20 kilometers over our head and use that to stop the planet warming up in a kind of ugly tech fix.
You could spray something into the atmosphere to change.
Spray pollution into the atmosphere to stop it warming.
So in the end, pollution saved them all. We owe pollution. We owe acid rain an apology, is what you're saying.
A totally imperfect technical fix.
Okay.
It would have risks. It wouldn't get us out of the long-run need to stop polluting, but it might actually save people and be useful.
The sky won't be really blue in the way it is now anymore.
The chemtrails are being used in conjunction with HAARP. By spraying metal oxides into the air above enemy skies, then directing ELF waves from HAARP to heat those metal oxides, the temperature of the sky is raised to more than 100 degrees Fahrenheit, preventing the accumulation of water vapor that would otherwise form clouds and produce rainfall.
I wanted you to see that video because I wanted you to have a face for somebody who's actually out there violating the ethics of their job to promote geoengineering. I'm going to talk about geoengineering, but I want to share a story with you. Every time I'm asked to speak, I public speak for a living. I'll go into that, but I don't get nervous to speak to you. What I get nervous about is not getting emotional telling you my story. Because in 2002, shortly after 9/11, like a lot of military veterans, I raised my right hand and I took an oath to the Constitution to hopefully do something meaningful with my life. 19 years old, unsure what I wanted to do. So I enlisted in the U.S. Air Force. My job in the U.S. Air Force was working in bioenvironmental engineering. So what bioenvironmental engineering is in the Air Force is equivalent to that of the OSHA and the EPA, if you're familiar with that. So we were an embedded liaison to make sure that we were tracking all of the aspects and impacts of the military, meaning what is the military doing and how is it impacting the environment, because we were accountable for that. Being government, we did not get any special treatment. We just couldn't be fined being another federal agency. EPA can, but not OSHA. So from the health side, it was knowing what you do in the Air Force. What does your job entail that is hazardous to your health? And I'm going to give you an example. Let's say that you were an aircraft painter, you were a mechanic. My job would go out to make sure I knew everything that you did, what you were exposed to, and how to mitigate and engineer out those hazards. Because we needed to, one, it's your legal right to be working in a safe and healthful work environment. So throughout 9 years, I worked as an industrial hygienist and an environmental specialist. There's two bases I was at that are called air logistics centers. What does that mean? It's not like a fighter wing, it's not really fun and amazing. What they did is they took aircraft that around every 10 to 15 years, they were required to be dismantled down to the last screw. So that meant every single industrial process you can think about, checking the metal integrity, making sure everything's good to go, or sometimes overhauling equipment. Part of my job in tracking the health hazards was to look at any time someone wanted to buy a chemical, any type of chemical. It was ordered through a system, and in that system I had to go in there and say, the country we're in, we're not allowed to use this. We need to substitute it out with something a little less hazardous, while also maintaining the integrity for a technical order, meaning for that process it says you must use, xylene or toluene to do this process. Well, I have to kind of fast forward. I want to say around 2006, I started kind of opening my eyes to how the military wasn't really what I thought it was. And people approached me knowing what I did for a living and said, have you ever heard of chemtrails? Well, I hadn't. And that sparked my interest. So I went online and I looked at chemtrails. I saw a lot of, debunking, a lot of sites that were just kind of calling it a conspiracy theory. And I thought, well, geez, this is what I do for a living. Preventive health, making sure that people are not getting sick, especially in the workplace, and by things that we're doing that can affect, human health and the environment. To summarize it, in an attempt to debunk this conspiracy theory as I thought it was, I didn't debunk it. It literally changed my life. Like I said, this is hard for me because it's not easy standing here and telling my story. One day I was going through that computer system, which if you want to look it up, it's called an Air Force Form 3952. It is the approval of hazardous materials. I was finding tons and tons of large quantities of aluminum, barium, strontium in the forms of oxides and sulfates. And of course I knew that there's industrial processes you may not have heard of, but it's bead blasting, pneumatic sanding, shot peening. There is certain medias that's similar to that is used. However, I had already accounted for that. I would sit and look at this computer system and say, this shop wants to order this paint. I'm going to tie it to a task. We had to know what was being used, why it was being used, tracking it cradle to grave on how we were going to dispose of it to be compliant with OSHA and the EPA. One of the legal requirements in approving these is looking at what used to be called the material safety data sheet. On that sheet, it's going to list the manufacturer. It's going to list some maybe acquired personal protective equipment that needs to be used or some ways to mitigate the exposures. These electronic MSDSs did not have a manufacturer name. They were very vague. They almost looked to me like somebody had made it and scanned it into the system. So I asked the question, what is this being used for? I never got an answer, so I didn't approve it. And it sat there. And then the heat came down. Why aren't you? Are you behind on your 3952s? Only a select few of us did that. So I started asking questions. And at that point, my demonization began. I made my rank. I was decorated. I was a non-commissioned officer of the quarter. I won lots of awards. I had no reason for anyone to attempt to demonize me. So then I get moved over to the other Air Logistics Center. There's only 2 in the Air Force, which is in Warner Robins, Georgia. This kind of carried with me. And I thought, you know what? Should I revisit this? Is it worth it? Did I hit something? Maybe it's need to know. I started finding the same things at Robins Air Force Base. I was now doing some more investigation work. Part of what I did was to use a high volume air sampler to air sample up to, I'd say, a football field in about 10 minutes. I also conducted soil sampling because I thought, if this is real and they are spraying this, it's going to get to the ground. So I conducted air sampling, I conducted soil sampling, and I was getting high levels of these contaminants. When I started asking the question again under a new commander, I never in my life thought I would have somebody look me in the face and tell me, I am questioning you. Is there something wrong with you? You've been looking really depressed lately. I can put you under a mental evaluation for up to 120 days. Who would take care of your daughter? Because I was divorced at the time. As soon as I heard that, I knew. It validated everything I ever thought. And I thought, I've spent 9 years of my life trying to protect human health, and here we are violating law after law after law. Just sitting here, instead of protecting the people, we are poisoning the people. And I've never got up so much courage from that fear of being thrown in a cage, because when you're in the military, folks, you're a number. You are a number, and every aspect of your life is controlled. I was so lucky that my enlistment was coming up and I was supposed to re-enlist. I ran and did not look back. And I have been blowing the whistle and shouting ever since. And I left October 27th, 2010. Thank you. It didn't just end there, though. You got to remember, there's a whole career field of people that work in bioenvironmental engineering. A lot of those people were told, do not talk to me. Do not talk to her. Do not email her. They were given no contact orders. Because my biggest thing was, if I'm just so, dishonest, don't you think somebody would come out and say, she was never in the military or something negative to discredit me? They've ignored me, but they've tried to silence me. Every time I fly, I am pulled into a secret room. I literally am tagged in the system for the TSA. It is difficult. As an industrial hygienist, I do very well for myself, but it has been so difficult after leaving the federal government to maintain employment. Nowadays, everyone runs background checks on you, and the first thing they look at is, wow, here's a whistleblower. And you ask yourself, if this is true and we are spraying the people, where are the pilots? Where are the people? I don't know if you pay attention, but look at Snowden. Look at Manning. People don't come forward because these supposed Whistleblower Act protections that you have are not enforced, they're not supported, and they really don't exist. Well, what I want you to take from this is to understand that I am being completely honest with you, and that geoengineering is occurring, it's been occurring, it is not new, and your tax dollars are funding this. I 100% know that the U.S. Air Force was involved, and it kind of, I think back to all these things that I never had noticed. If you don't know what to look for, you can't look for something. And once I realized a process they were trying to hide, people have come out of the woodworks, from EPA compliance officers to ex-people that I worked with in my career field, who I cannot state for obvious reasons. I've had pilots come forward. I've had people come forward that actually load the canisters on the planes. These people don't come forward because they are afraid that they're going to end up like Snowden. And I continue to speak to let people know I've been screaming about this for 3 years and I'm still here. And why are you so afraid? Because many of these people are on active duty. And if you are willing to die for your country, supporting, the Constitution and defending us from enemies foreign and domestic, you are willing to die for your country, but now you're scared. You are scared and cowardly to talk about this. So I'm not just speaking to all of you in this room, I'm speaking to all those people that are going to watch this online and watch it on YouTube. Because you can come forward, you can help expose this, and we can stop it. So many people want to ask why. Why is this occurring? That's for later thought. From weather modification to weather weaponry, there's numerous reasons under Agenda 21 and tons of theories. But my job as an industrial hygienist is to make sure that I comply with the laws and enforce them. So it is unethical every day for all the other people that are out there that work in preventive health, or even physicians that aren't speaking about this. They need to. So one thing I want to tell you is what you can do about it. The biggest hurdle that we have is disinformation sites. I never say them, but I'm going to today, so that you know if anyone ever gives these to you as a reference to debunk you, it's Metabunk and Contrail Science. Those are two websites that are ran by a government shill named Mick West. And he is a computer gaming programmer who tries to tell you about persistent contrails. So somebody who isn't even credentialed in chemistry or physics or ecology, none of that, is trying to tell you that you're crazy. Okay? So also on social media, don't just hit the share button. There are links. You have to understand that I have met people who used to be purposeful disinformation trolls, as we call them. These people are paid to pretend that they're you, to get you on board to believe a website or an article, just so that you look so vulnerable. And then later it will be deemed non-credible, and then you look non-credible. So please vet, research. And if you have something to write with, I want you to take down my email. It is Kristen, Kristen, Meghan, Meghan, @gmail.com. And by emailing me, I can give you some information for what I'm about to tell you. If you still don't believe it, or you still want to convince people, there's something you can do. You can take a glass jar. It needs to be a glass jar, so there's no BPAs. Take a rain sample and take a snow sample. I tried to discourage the soil sampling because everyone's background of where you live is different. Because a lot of the materials that are used in geoengineering are natural occurring in Earth, just not in the industrialized form that they are used. So if you take these rain samples and you take the snow samples, email me, because I cannot publicly tell you where to send them, because we've actually been blackballed by labs who refuse to run our samples. And a problem that is occurring is people are sending in rain samples to labs that don't realize how low the limit of detection needs to be, because these are nanoparticulates. They are very small. So if you email me, I can tell you where to send in your samples, and it's only around $50. That may be tough on some people, but it's way cheaper than maybe what you assumed. So I just want everyone to know and understand that of all things, of all the freedoms that we are losing, geoengineering is the #1 issue that we are facing, because you can have guns and money and you can have everything. If you don't have food and water and you are dying of respiratory or neurological illnesses, what does it matter? So you've heard about vaccines, and you'll hear, about smart meters, and you'll hear about other issues like fracking. These are all systemic effects. We are getting overexposed to toxins. People will tell you fluoride's in the water, but it's not a lot. It is a lot, because you're getting it everywhere in your food, water that you drink. Everything is washed with that water. And you're getting your vaccines. All this, it's a coupled systemic effect, and our bodies cannot metabolize these toxins. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen to my story, and I will continue to shout from the rooftops. I don't care how many jobs I lose. I don't care how many friends or family I lose, because I took an oath. And in 9 years, I was not able to honor that oath, but I am today.
All right. Hey, Dottie, do you want to speak briefly to being a whistleblower yourself, and what she was talking about how those whistleblower laws are not being enforced at all? Just so our viewers can have some context to realize that it's really happening like that.
Oh yeah, there was no protection when I blew the whistle. They came after me and put me in jail, actually, on some bogus charges.
Yeah, so they're targeting people that are whistleblowing. They're not protecting them at all, and nobody's enforcing these laws, you guys, at all. Mr. John Doe, would you like to touch on the fact of what you told me the other day about the rainwater, and then how that correlates with what she's talking about? Hello? He might be on the phone call. I don't know. Well, we'll segue into let's do. I'm going to show you guys a hold on, let me bring it up real quick. I'm going to show you guys an article, or no, not an article, but a PDF. It's dated 1991 about the HAARP program, and I'm going to read for you guys a specific piece of this document that, if you have any doubts now, should convince you otherwise after I show you this. So, because this has been going on, and I've been following this kind of subject for many years myself, just personally, long before I started doing this podcast. I've been looking into these kind of things for years and years. So let me bring this up for you guys. HAARP 1990. Okay, here we go. Share my screen. All right, folks. All right, so what we have here: HAARP, HF Active Auroral Research Program, Joint Services Program Plans and Activities, Air Force Geophysics Laboratory, Navy, Office of Naval Research, February 1990. HAARP, HF Active Auroral Research Program. Okay, so we're going to go down here, and you can check this out on your own. I'll have the link up in the description at the end of the broadcast. But I'm going to go down here because this is the relevant part. HF Active Auroral Research Program, HAARP, Executive Summary. As described in the accompanying report, the HF Active Auroral Ionospheric Research Program, also known as HAARP, is especially attractive in that it will ensure that research in an emerging revolutionary. Seems like the light went out. Weird. Oh, my light went out. Hold on, you guys. Sorry about that. Just fix this real quick. There we go. Oh, my bulb's burning now. I'm gonna have to fix that. Sorry, you guys. Give me 1 second. Come on, light. That was really weird. Anyways, it's gonna be a little brighter in here because it doesn't want to work at the lower setting for whatever reason right now. Uh-oh, it's flickering now. I need to replace it. Sorry, you guys. Let me get back to this. An exciting and challenge. Okay, so here we go. As described in the accompanying report, HAARP is especially attractive in that it will ensure that research in an emerging revolutionary technology area will be focused towards identifying and exploiting techniques to greatly enhance C3 capabilities. The heart of the program will be the development of a unique high-frequency ionospheric heating capability to conduct the pioneering experiments required under the program. Potential applications. An exciting and challenging aspect of ionospheric enhancement is its potential to control ionospheric processes in such a way as to greatly improve the performance of C3 systems. A key goal of the program is the identification and investigation of those ionospheric processes and phenomena that can be exploited for DoD purposes, such as those outlined below. Generation of ELF waves in the 70 to 150 hertz band to provide communications to deeply submerged submarines. A program to develop efficient ELF generation techniques is planned under the DoD Ionospheric Enhancement Program. Geophysical probing to identify and characterize natural ionospheric processes that limit the performance of C3 systems so that techniques can be developed to mitigate or control them. Generation of ionospheric lenses to focus large amounts of HF energy at high altitudes in the ionosphere, thus providing a means for triggering ionospheric processes that potentially could be exploited for DoD purposes. Electron acceleration, I'm sorry, for the generation of IR and other optical emissions and to create additional ionization in selected regions of the ionosphere that could be used to control radio wave propagation properties. Generation of electromagnetic field aligned ionization to control the reflection something properties of radio waves. I have to look at that closer and see if I can't get rid of that smudge, you guys. Oblique heating to produce effects on radio wave propagation at great distances from HF heater, thus broadening the potential military applications of ionospheric enhancement technology. Generation of ionization layers below 90 kilometers to provide radio wave reflectors, mirrors, which can be exploited for long range over the horizon HF, VHF, and UHF surveillance purposes, including the detection of cruise missiles and other low observables. Okay, so basically what they're talking about there, folks, is modifying freaking the ionosphere using this technology for that one of those that they were talking about. I think it was the third one down. They were talking about controlling ionospheric processes. So that document right there shows that they were doing this in 1990 at the very least. So they had 30 some years more to get this shit fine-tuned. I mean, and then look at the weather patterns. I mean, look at the weather I'm having. I've been seeing I've experienced 4 storms here in Vegas that just where the wind just came and uprooted signs. And the last time it happened, it uprooted a whole freaking intersection light with the green, red, and yellow sign, lights, intersection lights. It uprooted a whole one of those. And then that storm came and went in less than an hour. Every time this happened, it did. So you tell me that's not engineered. That's not natural. That don't make no sense. Anyway, so we got that. Now I want to kind of segue into the narrative that they're trying to push forward about the Arctic conflict that they're saying is the new Arctic Cold War. And I just kind of want to, I'm going to do a screen reader. I'm going to have a screen reader read the articles for us for time efficiency and stuff, because it's just going to be quicker that way. I don't know if we're going to go through the whole thing. We might, but I want to briefly go through some of it for from different perspectives, and then give what we think is going on here and whatnot, you know. So let's do this.
Until recently, the Arctic has been known as an austere, inaccessible, and excessively harsh environment left to rogue explorers and hardened researchers.
All right, sorry folks, let me share my screen real quick. There we go. Just do this. All right.
We're at a pivotal point in the timeline of the Arctic. What we have to do now is be prepared to fight here and defend here. Lieutenant General David Crum, Commander of the Alaskan Command, 2020. Until recently, the Arctic has been known as an austere, inaccessible, and excessively harsh environment left to rogue explorers and hardened researchers. However, the formerly remote and untouched frontier is now becoming a competitive region. Polar ice melt opens access to rich natural resources and new shipping lanes which significantly shorten transnational sea routes. This brings not only resource competition, but also military competition. A literal Cold War is emerging in the Arctic. The United States must act now to remain competitive, to retain its freedom of access in the region, and to prevent a miscalculated conflict at America's northern doorstep. For its part, the U.S. Army must transform its Arctic forces to deter conflict in the region without provocation by being present, increasing exercises with sister services, cooperating more with other Arctic nations, and refocusing on where and when it trains. Further, the Army in Alaska must transform and organize itself for both effective deterrence and command within the region. The U.S. must be present, relevant, and capable in the region to deter any potential adversaries, especially as U.S. rivals increase their Arctic operations. For example, Russia, which claims 70% of the Arctic seabed, is expanding its military activity daily. Last fall, its military conducted exercises in the Bering Sea, within the U.S. economic zone. These exercises included the largest number of sea and air forces Russia has mobilized in decades, sending a clear message about its Arctic intentions. Its naval maneuvers disrupted fishermen and harassed commercial vessels in an attempted display of dominance. It also maintains a large fleet of over 45 icebreakers to show its commitment and level of national interest in the region. In contrast, the United States, which is also an Arctic nation via Alaska, has a total of 2 icebreakers. Even China, in its ravenous quest to grab global resources, is now calling itself a near-Arctic state, as it extends its Polar Silk Road initiative. It often conducts reconnaissance-like explorations around Alaska and the greater Arctic. In response, the Department of Defense, DOD, and each of the U.S. Armed Services, to include the Coast Guard, have developed Arctic strategies to address the region's emerging challenges and threats. Executing these strategies will undoubtedly be challenged by limited existing resources and future budget constraints. An effective Army component in support of these strategies must be a priority. The Army's 2021 strategy, Regaining Arctic Dominance, calls for regaining our Arctic focus by developing the right doctrine, training, and equipment. The U.S. Army in Alaska can do this without a significant strain on resources and budgets. It can be more prepared by increasing cooperation with other Arctic nations. It must deter, and if necessary, defeat aggression as an allied force. It's how we did it throughout our history and it's how we will do it in the future. Likewise, the Army will fight as part of a joint force in the future. Soldiers, airmen, sailors, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen must continuously train together. The more repetitions, the better they will be in the event of a crisis or conflict. The U.S. Army in Alaska must increase troop exchanges, and practice cold weather and mountain training with its Arctic allied and partner nations, Canada, Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden. It can do the same with other extreme cold weather or mountainous nations such as Nepal, India, Mongolia, South Korea, and Japan. Together, it can share expertise and experience to hone its skills in extreme environments. Teaming with the other nations and sister services can maximize resources, expand learning, demonstrate unity, and create parity. Training alongside allies and partners, and across sister services, sends competitors a message of unity and resolve, and emphasizes the Arctic as a defense priority. Potential adversaries understand the power and influence of multinational efforts, as well as of capability, will, and joint warfighting synergy. We all must train as we will fight. Where and when we train is also crucial. Intuitively, the Army must conduct training in the harsh elements of Alaska and other extreme cold regions, which replicate the environments in which soldiers may fight. Instead of moving troops and equipment thousands of miles to train at California's temperate Fort Irwin National Training Center or Fort Polk, Louisiana's Joint Readiness Training Center, warfighting training should happen in Alaska, during winter. Establishing a joint, Pacific Multinational Readiness Center, JPMRC, in Alaska would permit units assigned to defending U.S. Arctic interests to perform critical warfighting training in an extreme cold weather environment. This would also save significant time and money associated with sending personnel and equipment to the lower 48. With more training in Alaska and more focus on conducting high-intensity training during the winter months, Army units in Alaska could build upon the Arctic expertise they need to be the force's Arctic experts. To achieve this, the Army must also transform its Alaskan force. Transforming the Army.
I'm not going to go through the whole article because it's actually a lot longer than that. And for time purposes, I want to get to some more relevant points that I want to touch on. Mr. John Doe, why don't you tell our viewers
what you can touch on my points.
Yeah, about the rain. You're talking about the rain.
Well, no, I'm saying you can touch on my points, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Wrong points, though.
Well, I'm going to start off with that, but I want you to kind of give your bit. But go ahead. What were you telling me about the rain the other day, about the lead in the rain?
Oh, well, the factor is this weather. You can go back to since Texas threatened to sue Biden. When have you ever known Texas to freeze the fuck over?
Right. Okay.
When have you ever known Texas to get snow?
So now then this HAARP program is funded by the DoD, of course.
And it happens right when they're suing him.
Right. I know the timing is just come on, but yeah, no, it's like so check it out. So tell our viewers what a little bit about your background. You don't have to go into too much detail, but who did you work for? During the Iraqi and Afghan war.
I was a contractor.
Okay.
PMC.
Okay.
We guarded during the day and we played poker at night.
Okay. Now, what would be your take on that article? Because that's from the War Room College, here, in the States, so of course.
Right. Well, yeah, the Arctic stuff is quite accurate. It's been going on for a while. It's just recently it's got really heavy, and it's unexplained why.
Right. So now, based on what we were talking about with the whole HAARP, would you suppose that they're engineering this climate issue to suit their agenda? Would be my question, because I'm seeing indications that would make sense.
Well, as far as what you guys think of as fucking climate change and everything, the more trees we cut down, the more hotter we're gonna get. They cut down the CO2. They give us the shade. So throwing $50 billion at global warming is stupid. How many trees you got to cut down to make that?
Right.
Again, trees is what eats down our carbon emissions.
But what I'm getting at is, would it be safe to say, in your opinion, because of your expertise, because I know you've contracted with and you've done some work. I know you've done some work for some 3-letter agencies that were with the DoD, and I know you have that insight. I want to. Would you say that this whole thing is being engineered from the get-go to push that agenda, and to convince people that we have to be worried about climate change, and that the world, the planet's dying, or whatever that whole narrative they're trying to spin? Would you say that that's a good guess on that that's what's going on here?
Well, I don't know about so much them controlling it, because shit, let's face it, they can't even control a dollar that they put in COVID.
But there certainly looks like they're trying to you, because like I've seen some really freaking this last week here in town.
I keep saying that we're trying to find for renewable resources.
Mm-hmm.
When our finest renewable resource is sitting right there in the ocean. Because again, you can use ocean to create electricity with magnetic propulsion. With the magnetic propulsion, now you've created hydrogen gas. So you created 2 power systems off of one source. And look, it doesn't up the atmosphere.
Makes sense.
And we have abundance of it.
Right.
And it's rising because of the water displacement. So why don't we utilize it before we become like Kevin Costner in Waterworld?
Right. That's a good idea. I never thought about it like that. But you know, salt water, is salt water not conductive? It is, correct?
It's a catalyst.
There you go.
Just like salt water and baking soda, same principle.
Mm-hmm. And, most people don't realize this, but a battery is made with, you can make it with pickle juice, you can make it with vinegar, salt water works. But yeah, salt water is conductive, folks.
Salt water you can actually use as a conduit instead of wiring to run electricity.
That too.
Which then you have 0 power loss.
It's smart. So hey, so tell so what do you think about all that, Dottie? What's going on with the weather right now? What's your take on that?
Well, I think it's crazy. I know they're messing with, the weather and stuff. Like the other day we were having some major storms and you could tell that these were real storms. Like these were God-made storms. The thunder, the way the rain was, everything about them was just different than some of the other storms we've had. Like what happened to the thunder and being able to count with the lightning and, how many miles away it was? You can't do that anymore. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, definitely.
So like they don't know how the timing's not right. Before you used to be able to, between the thunder and the lightning, count, and that's how far off the storm was from you. Now you hear thunder when you don't see lightning, or you see lightning with no thunder. It's strange.
Did you ever think that our planet is just one big dome?
Yeah.
Like we're going into conspiracy theory world, but
yeah,
honestly,
well, it's important we have these conversations, Well,
it's almost like the Truman Show.
Yeah, sometimes you would think, yeah.
Some of the shit you see in the sky don't make sense.
Well, there's a lot going on in the sky right now that I think we're finding that we can't explain.
And then, you know what else I've noticed?
You can't get back to the moon?
Huh?
We don't know how to get back to the moon.
Well, yeah, I've noticed that too. But another thing I've noticed is I have a vine that grows down my fence every summer. And I've noticed that it doesn't come in the same time as it used to. It's coming in later. Like the seasons are messed with, and it doesn't last as long. Like it's just now starting to really grow down my fence and summer's almost over.
You got to remember too, our planet, every 30,000, I think it's like 30,000 years, it either speeds up or slows down.
Well,
I think it speeds up propulsion. Right. But again, that would be what we were talking about before, Mike, with the space-time continuum, how things seem to be clunky. We could have been worse. We could be spinning out of, we would never know. Until we collide into something.
Right.
We never know if we're flying into a black hole right now. We never know.
Maybe. I mean, if everything's controlled, then how would we know? We wouldn't. Because then everything. I mean, it's almost like
Wall-E.
Right. So I'm gonna share this screen share this article from Sky News on the Arctic Core. I want to give their perspective for our viewers, and then we're going to segue into a whistleblower site that I found regarding geoengineering, which actually is similar to the video that we this one right here. So we'll segue into that after we do the Sky News real quick. I think it's important that we get these different perspectives so that you can decide for yourself.
Fears for possible Arctic conflict grow as NATO expands, Russia's belligerence in a race for resources serving as a catalyst. A Sky News investigation has revealed mounting fears of a future war as Russia, NATO, and China battle for sway at the top of the world.
Of a looming war in the Arctic are expected to be addressed during this week's NATO Leaders Summit. There's a massive military build-up in the Arctic Circle, with the US, China and Russia all vowing for sway in the region. And a race for resources further increases the likelihood of armed conflict.
The frigid north is on a war footing. Recent NATO war games held in the Norwegian snow, the largest in 40 years, made that clear, as the West recognises an apparent rising Russian threat at the top of the world.
Russia has remilitarized the Arctic for 10, 12 years heavily, and NATO has done almost nothing, and only recently they woke up and now they are signaling to the other side, we will be ready also.
While Ukraine is the international community's present focus, the Arctic is likely to be the future frontier for great power competition. The US has increased Arctic patrols and this year allocated more than $175 million on new Arctic military projects. China has announced an Arctic strategy and built 2 icebreaker ships, while Russia is the most active, reopening Cold War-era Arctic bases, extending runways to accommodate nuclear bombers, and commissioning new icebreaker ships and submarines to strengthen its might in northern seas.
They have nothing to fear about. Even the Norwegian defense minister, they repeat that there is no immediate military fears.
There are fears a race for resources could lead to a boil-over. Thawing ice sheets are revealing new shipping lanes and an estimated $1 trillion worth of rare earth minerals. 30% of the world's untapped gas and 13% of its oil, for so long out of reach, may soon be accessible. And NATO's Arctic bastion, Norway, has already been attacked. Norwegian jets were scrambled at least 34 times last year, responding to possible Russian incursions. Russia is alleged to have carried out mock bombing runs, routinely jammed GPS signals in Norway, and to have hacked its parliament's computer systems.
Put together, these sound like acts of war. Yeah, in a way you can say that. We can also see it as it's in a way demonstrating the spectrum of potential threats.
Russia claims Norway is the one being provocative, pointing to its hosting of regular NATO war games and allowing the US to operate bases on Norwegian soil.
Norway considered itself last few years, it didn't exist, it didn't happen before, not as a sovereign individual country, but a far front of NATO.
This is where Norway and NATO ends and Russia begins, a 200-odd kilometre stretch patrolled by the Norwegian military and the Russian FSB. And there are calls for the military rhetoric on both sides to be toned down.
We don't think Norway should be as engaged in NATO as we are now. We don't have time for more war. We don't have time for more escalation. We need to go the other way, demilitarization, not more militarization.
Those calls are not being heeded. More NATO war games are scheduled here next year. The likely addition of Nordic nations Sweden and Finland into NATO will further inflame Russian tensions, and given Russia's treatment of bordering nations and the expected race for resources, it may prove difficult to lower the temperature in the Arctic Circle. Brent O'Halloran, Sky News on the Norway-Russia border.
Let's
Something I found funny about that is they were talking about the minerals we were talking about.
Documents have revealed that former US President Donald...
Go away. Sorry, go ahead.
I said the funny thing is they were just talking about the billions in minerals that you and me were just talking about the other day.
Yeah. Yeah, the resources,
Yeah, you remember they also found that in Afghanistan.
Oh, yeah. Oh, of course. This is just nothing more than the same thing, but for in different
They're
places, more or less.
pillaging for resources.
Right, resources.
Like I said, we're nothing but locusts on this planet.
To them, yeah.
Yeah. Well, think about it. All we do is pluck our resources.
Oh yeah. I mean, we consume natural resources, but a lot of this stuff is
Well, we spent $70 billion on our space program to find new planets, but we haven't took care of the one we have.
That's true. I would agree with that assessment completely, actually. So
we have the ways to fix it, because again,
we do have the ways to fix it. You're right. We do.
Well, no, because if you use carbon dioxide and you add hydrogen, that actually creates oxygen. So therefore, why don't we create a vat with hydrogen, electrify the ocean, put the hydrogen into the atmosphere, eat up the carbons?
Yeah, but wouldn't that kill all the fish and all the sea life?
Not if you make a separate pond.
Yeah, that'd be a big task, I think. I know,
Well,
but we do have. I mean, there's even other
it's the
technologies that I'm
oceans
aware of
we're
that we
talking
have
about.
that we could fix this problem. It's not that we can't. It's that they don't want to.
Seaweed eats more carbons than trees do.
You know what I'm saying?
But yeah, did you know that seaweed actually eats more CO2 than trees do?
Really, I didn't know that.
But yet, we keep making sushi.
Right?
We keep screwing up everything that's eating the CO2.
Right? Yeah, I know. It's contradictory.
AK, why they're rising?
Oh yeah.
No, it couldn't be that. It's because we're taking everything away that eats it. No, it couldn't be. No.
Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, yeah,
We'll throw more
no,
money
it
at
couldn't
it.
be that.
That'll fix it.
Couldn't be that, could it?
We'll throw more money at it.
I know, right?
That'll fix it.
Right. I know. It's just it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's freaking ridiculous. The absurdity. And do people not realize we are carbon-based life forms? Hello.
Well, here's the great fun factor about it. I'm gonna go to I'm Joe Biden, and I'm going to the summit about climate and global warming. So I'm gonna take my private plane.
You're a master troll. You're perfect at it. You're great. So hey, let's segue into this other article we got for you guys. I think we'll just stick with that video from that Sky News article. I think that'd be short and to the point. So we're going to switch over to this one, which is this is a pilot whistleblower, a geoengineering pilot.
Did you know on the average flight of Air Force One, it releases over 30,000 carbon emissions per flight?
I'm not surprised.
And how many places does that man travel?
Right.
A courageous chemtrail pilot exposes the global geoengineering program. Maybe my fellow pilots will read or hear about this, and decide to come forward as well.
And I'm just going to read this because it doesn't have, it's not text, it's actually image. So UN, NATO, CIA military weather manipulation radio waves using HAARP ELF pulses to heat up the ionosphere and select the amount of rain to fall and fill the water with heavy metals by chemtrails planes. Okay. This is dated February 18th, 2010. These images. These are satellite views. These two up here look like they're satellite views of chemtrails. I'm going to open this up in another window, see if it'll let me full screen it. Anyways, here we go. There we go. So these are apparently photos, satellite views of chemtrails. Okay. All right, now let's go and go through this. I think this is relevant. I think it's important everybody hear this. So
this article has been trolled persistently. We are beginning to understand why. HTTP URL. Finally, a military pilot steps forward and completely blows the lid off the unlawful and exceedingly destructive global chemtrail program. What follows is a video which puts forth a true story about a courageous pilot who has broken ranks with his chemtrailing peers. In so doing, he has risked his life and the life of his family. As you listen to this presentation, or read the text provided below, bear in mind that chemtrails are being sprayed 24/7 around the globe with terrible consequences. For those uninitiated in the ways of atmospheric engineering, chemtrails are but one geoengineering technique that is being systematically used by the U.S. military. The following link provides an excellent overview of the geoengineering/chemtrail phenomenon, as well as an exceptional photo doc. After all, only seeing is believing, for most people. The truth about chemtrails. No matter what the stated reasons are given to those who fly the chemtrail jets, they are always told by their superiors that this ongoing and illegal atmosphere-altering program is being conducted in the interest of national security. You'll notice that national security appears crooked because the whole intention behind geoengineering is as dangerously misguided as it is deceptively false. The indiscriminate, wide area, and systematic spraying of toxic aerosols throughout the skies of the world couldn't possibly have anything to do with national security. Those that buy into such a ridiculous notion have obviously been either brainwashed or bribed into believing such an absurd and nonsensical agenda. That's precisely why this unprecedented expose is so important. Never before has anyone directly involved with the piloting of chemtrail airliners ever gone public. Not only does Blue J1, as he is known, go public, he completely blows the lid off of Operation Indigo Skyfold. This single act of identifying the name of what is perhaps the most destructive government program in recorded history is extremely critical. Why? Because it now gives the worldwide anti-geoengineering advocacy groups a target to hit within their own nations and governments. How, after all, could government officials and political leaders at every level, federal, state, county and city, be so clueless about a massive aerosol spraying program that is going on in the skies right above them? Can any responsible representative continue to plead such ignorance or indifference and get away with it? That's why this critical development is so huge. Really huge. It is what we have all been waiting for, yet so few in the movement really get it. Which is why this particular message has to be taken to the wider public. Because at the end of the day, every human being on every continent will really abhor two things about the now ubiquitous chemtrails. Chemtrails routinely transform warm sunny days into cool cloudy ones. No one likes to see their clear sunny days stolen after a couple of hours of chemtrailing. Day after day of overcast skies have profoundly changed many a locale which have traditionally experienced clear skies. Is there anyone who prefers damp cloudy days to dry sunny ones? Certainly the people of Florida and California want their fun in the sun. So does the rest of the USA. Two chemtrails contain a mix of toxic chemicals and poisonous compounds such as barium salts, aluminum oxide, strontium, mercury among many others, which eventually end up falling to Earth. The chemtrail mix of toxins inevitably leaves its residues on farm fields and forests, lakes and ponds, and lawns and gardens. How does one possibly stop the noxious chemicals from entering one's home and automobiles, office building, and shopping malls? Whoever wants a toxic chemtrail brew dropped on them every other day? Geoengineering has proven unequivocally to be extremely detrimental to both human health and the greater planetary environment. As for the many adverse health effects, the link below gives an excellent summary. Chemtrail syndrome, a global pandemic of epic proportions. More.
All right, we're gonna read this article too that they provided in that link because I think it's important. Oh, this is where they got all their photos from. Okay, cool. We can show you guys in full screen then. Awesome. All right, cool. So let's do this article real quick. Here we go.
The truth about chemtrails. The corporate government unleashed, from time to time, its paid hacks and internet trolls to try to debunk so-called conspiracy theories, among which is the abstract painting of our skies known as chemtrailing. Here's a Wikipedia article they have written for purposes of misleading the public. False evidence of chemtrails. Ballast barrels in a prototype Boeing 747. Photographs of flight test barrels are sometimes said to show chemtrail planes. Ballast barrels in a prototype Boeing 747. Photographs of flight test barrels are sometimes said to show chemtrail planes. Photographs of barrels installed in the passenger space of an aircraft for flight test purposes have been claimed to show aerosol dispersion systems. The real purpose of the barrels is to simulate the weight of passengers or cargo. The barrels are filled with water, and the water can be pumped from barrel to barrel in order to test different centers of gravity while the aircraft is in flight. 35. Wikipedia. My question is, how many times do we have to test for the plane's center of gravity? Daily? Weekly? Yearly? Or, can we just use computer simulation just like flying UAV drones?
All right, and then we're going to go through the slideshow of photos for you guys. This says flight test control, data logging and telemetry, multiplexing computers for massive aircraft real-time data. OSHA spill kit to handle accidents for the liquid in the tanks. Flight test engineer jump seats. Temporary raised floor for cabling. Liquid level sensor. All orange Boeing flight test wiring is torn out after testing is over. There are more than 5 miles of it on the plane. Well, this is interesting. They got a lot of neat screenshots here. All right. So that's the screenshot. Let's see if there's anything left in that article. Oh, here we go. Oh, nice. I think they even have a video. Let's play it. Let's just briefly read this little part right here. And then we'll play the video for our viewers.
Here's a well-written article about altering the Earth's weather and deliberately killing its people. Pilots, doctors, and scientists tell the truth about chemtrails/geoengineering. November 1, 2014 by Arjun Valia. Chem. One factor that's commonly overlooked when it comes to talking about human health and environmental degradation is geoengineering and solar radiation management, SRM, also known as chemtrails. The name seems to come from the fact that various geoengineering and SRM programs use stratospheric aerosols like barium, nano-aluminum-coated fiberglass known as CHA.A.R.P, radioactive thorium, cadmium, chromium, nickel, desiccated blood, mold spores, yellow fungal mycotoxins, ethylene dibromide, polymer fibers, and more. Below is a video of multiple scientists, doctors, and pilots telling the truth about chemtrails. It's a very serious issue that's often ridiculed and thrown into the conspiracy realm. As a result, I attached information from an article I recently wrote about the subject.
I think what we'll do
aircraft making a
is we'll play this, and then we'll do a little bit of discussion, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay, folks?
condensation trail is very similar.
But I think we'll do a follow-up episode to this next week because I want to delve more into this and see what we can really find, like a deep dive.
In many ways to when you go outside on a cold day and exhale, you create a condensation trail. That little cloud is a condensation trail. Now, if you take a 2-mile walk on a cold day and you can turn around and you can see your condensation trail tracking all the way back for 2 miles. That's how crazy it is to think that what we're looking in the sky is actually condensation trails.
The contrails, not the chemical, the contrails occur because of cold air, minus 30. It takes high altitude, around 30,000 feet plus. There's carbon dioxide and water vapor in that exhaust. That turns to ice crystals, and that's what you see, the white stream behind it. Those white crystals of ice warm up, dissolve, and the smoke goes away. And it never lasts more than a minute. What we're seeing now, and I first could not believe it, and I started looking at the skies, and these are not normal. They're not natural. There's something going on. I don't know who it is or why they're doing it. All I can testify is it's not natural and it's not normal. It's got to be some outside influence doing that. Thank you.
I'm here to give you testimony that chemtrails, they're not contrails, are indeed real. They're spraying almost every day. I watch the clouds and watch the spraying program going on. I want to tell you that we're in very great danger from the pollution that's coming down over us. And we've been led astray by the military-industrial complex, and they're responsible for the cloud's creation and weather manipulation programs. They're dark operations. That's why they're not out in the media.
I look around and I look up and see this. Many times I've spoken about chemtrails, and I get this blank look on my face. What are you talking about? I'm saying, look up. As a pilot, before I fly, I look up. And so, boy, they're really out there working.
When you look up at the sun and you see a white haze, that is aluminum floating in the air right now, and it's coming from the aircraft.
There's a huge amount of aluminum being found because these sprays have aluminum, strontium, barium, manganese. And there's a lot of argument that aluminum is very common to be found. But aluminum is only common in a bonded form. It's not common in a free form, and we're finding high rates of free aluminum in the soil, which is not natural.
The metal compounds that are being used are environmentally dangerous. We need to be monitoring them. We need to be testing them.
Okay, these previous guys, I've watched exactly what they do, and yes, they are correct. I've seen exactly the same stuff, so ditto marks on those. You want some figures? Okay, latest water test, tested the rain. 13,100 micrograms per liter of aluminum in the rain in 2013. Normally, it should be 0. So 13,100 is pretty damn much, folks. It used to be 0, then it was 100s in the 2000s, and then since 2010, it's into the 1,000s and the latest 13,100. In the snow on Mount Shasta, pristine Mount Shasta, 61,000 micrograms per liter, 4 times the amount that is found in the soil up there. Where in the hell is this stuff coming from if it's not coming from the soil?
We have clouds in the sky we've never seen before. Almost every day I'm seeing clouds I've never seen before. And NASA has been even named a few of these new clouds. It's really interesting, but NASA is a corporation. I want you to know that.
NASA has also conducted a research program in what they call metallized fuels. We're actually putting aluminum oxide right in the fuel because it has 2 atoms of aluminum and 3 atoms of oxygen. So during the combustion process, it releases all that oxygen and dramatically increases efficiency, but it leaves the aluminum in the air.
We got things coming from sky down, and it's a huge, huge problem. Because as it comes down, what happens is a couple of things. Is that it actually is in our air, we breathe it. And as we breathe it, it's actually going to go up through our nostrils, into our brain, easiest access to our brain frontal lobe. The contaminants that have been identified, which already been mentioned, are aluminum. Aluminum is the #1 free radical generator to the brain to cause early apoptosis, which is early death of brain, and it begins to set off the scar tissue, which we call the amygdalin, which is part of the chemical matrix related to Alzheimer's.
I'm a neurologist practicing in Reading for 17 years, and in the past 5 years, I've seen the number of patients with Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, and other neurodegenerative diseases tremendously increased, almost quadruple.
I became interested in chemtrails about 8 years ago when I was in Hawaii, and the Hawaiians are really being very vocal about it. I concur about the increasing number of Alzheimer's. They have been able to take the aluminum and micronize it, which means it'll stay up longer. But it also means, and I don't know if any of you have noticed some metallic taste in your mouth when they're spraying, but you inhale that, it goes up through your cribriform plate and through your sinuses and into the brain.
As you heard, to spray nanoparticles, very small particles. These nanoparticles, they basically trigger a programmed cell death in the brain, and that is the ultimate path we see in Alzheimer's.
That's problem number 1, because when we look at the Alzheimer issue, we say those are the old. The real problem is, and the real scare I have, is as I am a father of 2, I am a grandfather of 3, So the drama is our children. ADD started in the 70s. Autism was not on the radar. There was no documents, there was no information. It was 1 in 100,000 children. Today, what we have is 1 in 48 boys. I was part of the early group that was looking for aluminum in ADD and ADHD. And all of those children that started to develop those phenomena had high levels of aluminum. When we figured out protocols to detox them out, to free the body of those particular contaminants, what happened is that their brains came back. When we do this to the age, it doesn't come back as quick, but it will come back. But I'm seeing Alzheimer's in 56 years old. Back in the 70s, Alzheimer's when you were 80.
If you remember 8 to 10 years ago, there was this big move to get rid of aluminum from underarm deodorant because it would cause Alzheimer's. Look what they're doing to us now.
I want to give you a little bit of history on the background behind nanoparticles has been described before. A nanometer is 1 billionth of a meter. It's very small. In fact, if you have particles, say, that are 40 or 50 nanometers across, you can take and line 50 of them up next to a single red blood cell. These things are extremely tiny. They're pervasive.
The collapse and decrease of agriculture is something I worry about even more than the previous info about autism and Alzheimer's.
Believe me, I'm seriously concerned with what I'm watching. As a wildlife biologist, I've been watching the ecosystem collapse. When you lose all your stream organisms, when you have aluminum overload in your streams, you're killing your microbial bacteria and you're disrupting the entire ecosystem. So it goes way beyond just a little bit of pollution. How did Monsanto know to create aluminum resistant plants? I don't think I've heard anybody ask that question. Okay.
Insects. I've done studies in Siskiyou County. They're at 20% of normal. The aquatic insects basically made a nosedive in 2006 to about 20% of normal. So far this year, I've sampled 200 trout stomachs. 98% of them are empty. So sorry about the trout fishing fellows. The mayflies, stoneflies, dipterus, and caddisflies are damn near gone. The terrestrial sampling is down to about 20% of normal, except for pest species like ants. We're seeing a loss of the major bird species, and as the gentleman said, the ecosystem is unraveling, and Audubon's been telling you that for years.
The materials that are going into the environment right now, aluminum oxide nanoparticles and barium nanoparticles, these just happen to be the same materials that they use in nanothermate explosives. And so when this stuff settles down out of the air into the environment, it is small enough to be absorbed through the root structure of the trees in the forest. And so when there's a forest fire, and there will be a forest fire, those fires burn dramatically hotter. The point is that the cost of firefighting, the cost in the healthcare system have nearly doubled in the last 10 years. The amount of acreage is lost because of fires. The impact on human health is dramatic.
I personally tested water and aluminum, and I found aluminum had 47 times the normal expected amounts. Strontium had 10 to 20 times the amounts. Barium was 20 times. This is what the stuff looks like here. I collected it. Looks, most people just think it's a cobweb, but I tested it. It has outrageous amounts of barium, strontium, and aluminum, but they destroy the sample, so I'm not letting this get away from me.
You know, these tests are international in scope. We're seeing this all over the world, guys. Okay, pH of acid soils is 20 times more alkaline. The aluminum in the soil has doubled in the last 10 years. The rain normal was 5.6. It's 20 times more alkaline. Aluminum blocks essential nutrients. I am unable in my garden to restore normal pH, and that's because nanoparticles are now in the circulatory systems of both plants and humans.
The Air Force conducted a study starting in 1993. It was called In Vitro Toxicity of Aluminum Nanoparticles in Rat Alveolar Macrophages. That's a real fancy way of saying testing the effect of aluminum nanoparticles on the white blood cells in the little air sacs in your lung, the alveoli. And what they found in this 8-year study was that these particles, when you're exposed to them long enough, it suppresses the ability of your white blood cells to defend you from airborne infections coming into your lungs. So it suppresses your immune system. But they also found that these same particles, once they get into your system, they can actually go through the barrier in each one of the cells. They get inside the cells, And these particles can actually suppress the ability of mitochondria, which are in the cells that help to gobble up toxins and things that would be harmful to the nucleus and the reproduction process of the cells in your body. These processes are suppressed, and so essentially by breathing this material in, your immune system is dramatically suppressed.
I wrote to the federal government because Air Force wrote a book, and on the first page of the book they said, we're going to control the weather by the year 2025. I asked them, what are they doing spraying these chemicals on the public? I said, there's violation of United States Code 50 USC 1520, which prohibits the American government from experimenting on the U.S. citizens with chemical agents. I said that law also requires who's ever experimenting, when the federal government does it, that they have to report to Congress within 30 days. They wrote back, they said they don't know what I'm talking about. We have enough evidence that there's a spraying going all over the place.
We were warned about the takeover of our freedoms by the military-industrial complex by both Eisenhower and Kennedy. They're gaining traction on us, folks. We are in trouble more than just a spraying program.
All I can say is it's about time we get up in arms about this, because it is affecting our health. It's high time that we as citizens of this great country take action.
Board of Supervisors in Suffolk County, New York, they outlawed geochemical engineering. Hawaii passed an ordinance prohibiting geochemical engineering. I urge you to bar geoengineering in Shasta County and pass an ordinance. At least ask some damn questions. What the hell is all this aluminum doing here? Why are the trees dying, fishes dying? Why is there Alzheimer and aluminum spiking? And why are these fibers on the ground here in Shasta County? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marmon.
Today, the Shasta County Board of Supervisors has been the beneficiary of some sincere, passionate, and knowledgeable comments. And I thank you for those. I am in agreement with my colleagues about sending letters and a call for action, but I would hope that we could go a step further. I would like for us to send a copy of this video where all of you spoke today, all 2.5 or 3 hours of this testimony, to be sent to our senators and our U.S. representatives, and also our representatives in the state of California.
We'll do that.
Let them listen to the passion that came out of this meeting today. Thank you.
You have the motion in front of you. I think it's understood. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion passes unanimously. It wouldn't surprise me at all if the response is one that exceeds far the boundaries of Shasta County in terms of the platform that is offered, as evidenced by those who attended today from around the world. That's very impressive.
All right, let me reshare my screen because we got to go through the rest of this article, and then we'll do a discussion on it briefly. Okay, yeah, this will be a good way to end it too, because we'll be able to quote all these sources. That'll be perfect. Cool. All right.
Very brief history of weather modification. Weather modification is generally considered to be the deliberate effort to improve atmospheric conditions for beneficial human purposes. Not all weather modification activities, however, have been designed to benefit everyone, and have been used for purposes of war. 1. The U.S. Navy launched a weapon capable of inducing a powerful earthquake on Haiti. This time it was only a drill, and the final part of it is destroying and taking over Iran. Hugo Chavez, then, President of Venezuela. Weather modification dates back to the 1940s, when the General Electric Company demonstrated that a cloud of supercooled water droplets could be transformed.
Hold on, folks. I just got a one of those emergency broadcast alerts on my phone. I just want to point that out for everybody. Like I said, we've been getting them all week. All right. All right, let's resume the article.
Into ice crystals when seeded with dry ice. Shortly after this, it was discovered that fine particles of pure silver iodide with a crystal structure similar to that of ice were effective for global weather modification. As a result, silver iodide remains the most often used material in cloud seeding. 1. The above statement was made in the 1970s, but so much more has happened since. With silver iodide began the birth of spraying stratospheric aerosols into the Earth's atmosphere. Silver iodide spraying began in the 1950s, 1, and has since proven to be extremely toxic, especially for the environment, human and animal health. You can learn more about it here. Aluminum is another thing. It's highly toxic and also very damaging to the environment. The idea of spraying aluminum into our atmosphere goes way back. Patents exist that clearly demonstrate the consideration of such materials that include the oxides of metals which have high emissivity. These include harmful substances like aluminum oxide and thorium oxide. A great patent example is one from the Hughes Aircraft Company that dates all the way back to 1990, that's over 20 years ago. You can take a look at it here. Fast forward to today, with even more chemicals added to the mix. This gives us the basic gist of geoengineering programs, image below, and why so many people are concerned about them. We do stuff in the stratosphere all the time, of course, so it's not as though the stratosphere is absolutely pristine. But you don't want to have people going off and doing things that involve large radioactive forgings, or programs that go on for extended periods, or for that matter provide lots of reactive surfaces that could result in significant ozone destruction. Taken from the first film cited at end of article. M. Granger Morgan, Carnegie Mellon University, and Lord Chair Professor of Engineering and Public Policy, National Academy of Sciences member. Modern-day spraying. In addition to specific research programs sponsored by federal agencies, there are other functions related to weather modification which are performed in several places in the executive branch. Various federal advisory panels and committees and their staffs, established to conduct in-depth studies and prepare reports, to provide advice or recommendations, or to coordinate weather modification programs, have been housed and supported within executive departments, agencies, or offices. 1. These programs are conducted by the Department of Defense, which means they remain classified, and why so many scientists and meteorologists don't say anything about it. At the same time, all it really takes is observation. Most of these programs are backed by the CIA and NASA, who are supporting the National Academy of Sciences with regards to geoengineering projects. Source, again, geoengineering projects are any attempt to alter the way the planet or its weather systems operate, and as you can see, have been happening for a long time now. Source, the weather was even modified in China for the 2008 Olympics. Source. If you are a constant observer of the skies, as I am, it's not hard to see that something is already going on. After a day of spraying, the trails don't evaporate, they spread out and block the sun. Global dimming is another term people aren't familiar with. 20% of the sun's rays are not hitting the earth. That means there's a lot of metal up there. Dane Wigington. Concerns have been voiced for years, by various individuals from all over the world. For example, Rosalind Peterson, President and co-founder of the Agriculture Defense Coalition, ADC, an ex-United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, employee stated at a 2007 United Nations hearing on global warming that one of the things that's affected by climate change is agriculture, but some of what we are seeing is man-made, but man-made in a different way than what you may guess. Weather modification programs, experimental ones done by private companies, the US government, are underway, and there are more than 50 operations underway across the United States. All of these impact agriculture because they change the microclimates needed for agriculture to survive. None of these programs are done with oversight. International corporations are modifying our weather all the time, and modifying it in ways that cover thousands and thousands of square miles. Most of it is chemically altered, so what happens is that we are putting ground-based chemicals that are shot into the air that change and modify our weather. You can read more, and view that full hearing here. Geoengineering and chemtrails are a huge issue, and when talking about climate and environmental degradation, it's something that must be mentioned. The fact that it's not is very suspicious, given the fact that they've been spraying for and modifying our climate for so long. Dane Wigington has an extensive background in solar energy. He is a former employee of Bechtel Power Corp and was a licensed contractor in California and Arizona. He is the lead researcher for www.geoengineeringwatch.org and has investigated all levels of geoengineering from chemtrails to HAARP. He assisted Michael Murphy with his production of What in the World Are They Spraying, and has appeared on an extensive number of interviews to explain the environmental dangers we face on a global level. This article provides a fraction of the information that is available out there. I highly recommend watching these two, below, documentaries on the subject and visiting www.geoengineeringwatch.org for more information. The documentaries below include much more information, and a lot of scientific data. What in the world are they spraying? Full length. Why in the world are they spraying? Full length. Annotated bibliography. Obtained from the National Archives. A United States government document printed at the request of the United States Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation in November 1978. 1. HTTP URL. Obtained from the NASA Archives, a document prepared for the Interdepartmental Committee for Atmospheric Sciences. Prepared by Homer E. Newell, a mathematics professor and author who became a powerful United States government science administrator, eventually rising to the number 3 position at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, in the early 1960s. HTTP URL. A history of weather modification programs prepared by Dr. Vermeeren, professor at the Delft University of Technology, Faculty of Industrial Design Engineering. It's a 300-page scientific report entitled, Case Orange, CHEMTRAIL Science, Its Impact on Climate and Weather Manipulation Programs Conducted by the United States and its Allies. It was prepared for the Balfour Group by a team of scientists but presented anonymously. It was sent to embassies, news organizations, and interested groups around the world to force public debate. 2. HTTP URL. In 2009, researchers published Modification of Cirrus Clouds to Reduce Global Warming, which proposed 2 methods of delivery for the same proportion of metallics to silica and the same staying power of 1 to 2 weeks. The report notes that the proposed scenario by the IPCC Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change in 2001 is identical to the claims in Hughes Aircraft's 1991 patent. Hughes was acquired by Raytheon, a private defense contractor, in 1997, the same company that acquired E-Systems and the HAARP contract. The above referred to patent is linked within the article. David L. Mitchell and William Finnegan, Modification of Cirrus Clouds to Reduce Global Warming, Environmental Research Letters Volume 4 No. 4, October 30, 2009. Available by subscription, HTTP URL. A 1996 report by top military personnel in the U.S., Weather as a Force Multiplier, Owning the Weather in 2025 to evidentiary details, like governmental spraying schedules, chemical orders, correct nomenclature used in airline operating manuals, and calls for geoengineering by economists, to support its notion of heavy involvement of governments at the top level in climate control projects. 3. HTTP URL. In 2007, the World Meteorological Organization, WMO, published a statement that included guidelines for the planning of weather modification activities. Acknowledging that the modern technology of weather modification began in the 1940s, it is still an emerging technology. 4. HTTP URL.
All right, folks, we'll add this link up here in the description after the show. We'll also some of these sources are no longer valid; they've been removed. So we'll do some Wayback Machine searching and find them for you. And for next week's show, we'll cover them. I think will be important. I think because it looks like there's a lot of good data here we can use to either verify or debunk this claim. So I think we'll be able to figure something out. And maybe even how it's connected to that Arctic war they say is heating up. What do you think's going on with that, Dottie? Hello? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't hear your question. What was it?
Oh, I said, what do you think's going on with the whole weather modification, and how do you think it's tied to the Arctic, the supposed Arctic war, if it is at all? What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, the Earth does change, and it goes through like periods of times. And I know we're coming to an end of like an eon, you know, and like the big cycle. So I think a lot of it's the Earth is just like trying to like purge and clean itself, you know, go into the new cycle that it's headed into. So I think a lot of it's just the Earth because she's ascending too, right?
Right.
So I think some of it's just part of her ascension.
But
and I think others of it is them.
Oh, go ahead.
And I think some of the other stuff going on is them trying to bring harm to us. I think a lot of like that too.
Because I've seen that like some really weird like shit that weather storms that will come and go in less than an hour, and then they like uprooted signs. Like what the hell? That's never happened. Like I started noticing this in 2013, summer 2013. I got the original on a video, but it was lower quality, but I have it on my original Facebook. And then I've seen like 3 subsequent storms, like separated by like, I think it was like 2 or 3 years apart, you know? And I'm like, and it always seems to be in the summertime.
Yeah.
And then this last week, we've had this really weird weather. I mean, I showed you guys, I paused the article. I showed everybody on my phone the flash flood warning we just got. You know, so it's like, okay, what's really going on here?
I think it's a little bit of both, really.
Yeah,
I think some of it's natural, some of it's not. You know, some of it's just the time we're in.
Right. No, it's always important to remember that. Like, I think what I found in my research on a lot of these subjects is it's never really all one thing or all the other. It's usually a combination of like not really even, but it's a combination of different factors, but usually it's all of the above, you know. And that's what I've noticed is this consistent pattern with doing this kind of research and then finding out what the real, because you have different, like you said, some of it's the real, some of it's manufactured, you know. We could, but you can usually tell some, but it's definitely a combination because we're seeing different patterns we've never seen before. Now, shorter patterns and quicker patterns of weather phenomena we're seeing, I have no doubt are engineered in my mind. I'm convinced of it.
Right, because everything's about chemicals. It's everything. Like, oh, you got weeds in your yard, get some chemicals. You know what I mean? You want to clean your bathroom, get some chemicals. Everything's chemicals. Like, you're not healthy, get some chemicals. You know, chemicals.
Well, tell our viewers what you used to do before your business tanked because of COVID.
Oh yeah, I ran a commercial cleaning company. It was an all green company, and I didn't clean with any chemicals. Actually, I cleaned with these special rags that had like silver in them. Yeah, and I used to clean construction, and then private homes with
silver,
no
folks, is antimicrobial, mind you. So
with no chemicals. And, you know, none of my clients were ever sick. So, you know, if I wasn't getting their house clean, people would get sick from that, you know, like the bathroom not being clean and stuff. And I never had any complaints of like my clients constantly being sick because their house wasn't clean.
Yep, that makes perfect sense from a scientific standpoint. Silver silver alginate, in like your yeah, dude, totally. That's used for wound for bed sore wounds.
Burns. They use it for quite
burns
a few
too.
things.
Yeah.
But the thing was, these rags were woven so tightly in a way that it just would, with the silver. Oh, I loved them. They're called Norax. If you ever get a
That's
chance,
really
get
cool.
yourself some of those.
I
They're
never even
awesome.
knew they made those. I got to get me some.
Yeah, they're awesome. Like I lived by them.
So, what do you think about this Arctic war that they're trying to say is heating up? This supposed Arctic Cold War. What do you think's really going on? I think that whole narrative of we're about to go to war is just a fear tactic. I think that the legacy media is trying to freaking scare us with. I don't know. That's my take on it. But that's
Are you talking about China and Russia? With
China and Russia and the U.S. in this whole Arctic situation with the resources?
Well, you know what? I think there's more going on to the Arctic than we know, like for sure.
Okay.
It could be fairmongrel, like stuff. I don't know. I haven't seen or heard too much. I haven't really.
Nor have I. Yeah.
Checked into it too much, but I do know that there's something going on that they don't want us knowing. There's like portals there. There's.
No, we're talking about. I think we're talking about the North Pole here, not the South Pole.
Okay.
So I think the other one is Antarctica. This one is the Arctic.
Oh.
Yeah, this is news to me.
They got me confused, huh?
Yeah, no, it confused me at first too, but then I was like, wait a minute, no, this is the opposite end.
Oh,
but yeah,
okay.
yeah. So this is because of all the
Why?
ice is melting near Greenland and all that, and up there at the top. And I guess it's freeing up a bunch of minerals and resources that haven't been,
Are there something buried there they don't want us to know about, or they want to get to, from like ancient history, like the mud floods and, all that stuff where our history is just buried into the earth?
Yep.
There could be something buried there that they want to get in and get first.
That's a possibility too. We don't know. That's the thing, we don't know. But it's important that we ask the questions, and of course we should always use a discernment. But like I've seen a lot of indicators that something's going on.
Something with the Anunnakis, maybe.
Who knows? Could be anything. I mean, maybe it is minerals and resources. I don't know. This is kind of the first I've really been hearing about that Arctic war. So. It's news to me, really. My buddy's the one who brought it up. I don't know where he went. I wanted to get his take, but I think he had to jump off. He had some shit he had to take care of, probably.
Did you hear about the city under the ocean off of, like, I believe Florida, that they found when they were doing like some sonar?
Oh yeah, I remember you're talking about the Bimini Road, right? The Bimini Road or whatever.
I don't know. I just heard it briefly the other day. I don't know if it was something we were watching. I don't remember, but they were doing like imaging of the ocean floor, and it come back with like pyramids and.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. I think you're talking about the Bimini. Oh, I don't even know how to pronounce it. Bimini Road discovery over in the Bahamas, off the coast of Florida. Yeah.
What could it be like?
That was like, I think that was like in the late 90s or maybe early 2000s when that happened, wasn't it?
Well, I'm slow. I'm late to the game, man. I'm just finding out about this stuff.
Oh no, you're good. No, you're good. It's relevant. All of it's just stuff is ties in together, I'm sure, somehow. We're going to do a deep dive on next week's episode on the Arctic War and try and see what we can find more on that angle, but also on the angle of the weather modification technology. I want to see if we can really dig and see what we can find. See if we can't find out what's really going on there, folks.
Well, when the weather changes up like this, it affects everything, like the animals and the birds, and next thing you know, we'll have whales beaching on the beach because the sonar's off and they thought it was going to be water there and it wasn't. Like things like that. Isn't like Lake Mead like almost dried up? Yeah.
Oh my God, dude, that shit's so low. There's like a boat, like a sunken boat from years and years ago, and it's like 3/4 out of the freaking water now. That's how low the.
And they're finding bodies.
Yeah. Oh my God, I was talking to my property, the owner of our property that we live at, right? The one who owns the property, and she was telling me the same thing. I was talking to her. I was like, "What's up with this weird weather that only comes at night?" And she said, "I don't know. Maybe they're trying to feel like meat because they got tired of finding bodies." And she confirmed that for me. And so I was like, "Oh shit!" So about the bodies too. So then it must be going on. It's like I've heard. So there must be some. I haven't looked into it any sources myself, but people are hearing that or getting that in our local community, which would confirm what we saw last night on that one show.
Right. So have you heard about the Colorado River is drying up also?
Yeah, isn't
that where don't you get your water supply from that?
Yeah, that is the Colorado. I mean, the Lake Mead is, the Colorado River ends up going to Lake Mead.
Oh, so it goes in, but isn't that your drinking water? Don't you get your water from there?
We do, yeah.
Yeah. So what are you gonna do,
dude? You know what's crazy? They've been oh, dude, it's so bad, dude. Like, there's a new law they passed here where property owners can freaking fine their tenants if they set their thermostat below 86 degrees. I was just talking to my property owner about that today. She was like, she couldn't believe it. And she's like, I'm not going to do that to my tenants. You know, yeah, you're crazy. 86 degrees is too hot. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, we're lucky. We got a good property owner. We don't have a slumlord. We got a good, solid, one that cares, and that takes care of business. So that's great to have, especially in these times. So we should probably wrap it up because we're at 1:59. We just hit the 2-hour mark. So, and we got that other show to show up on, you guys. We're going to be, what's the name of that, her show? Do you know?
Controlled family, controlled
right?
child trafficking, and controlled family court, something like that.
I know that one of the organizations is People's Bureau of Investigation. We're going to be doing I don't know if they're going to have that on theirs.
It's going to be on Telegram.
But it's going to be on Telegram. We're going to be on their show today. So in like an hour or so, you guys. So be looking for us on there. Thank you everybody for watching. We're going to wrap this up now. So great show.
Awesome.
All right, good night, everybody. Let me just play our brief outro script. And then we'll end it. There we go. It's just the intro script in reverse, but I'm just going to keep it the same intro today.